Brad, have you heard about the high five retweet?
The high five retweet? No. I just finally figured out how to do the twist. I can't do the high five retweet anytime soon.
The twist? What a Chubby Checker reference. That's great. Comic Lab, always timely with the 1950s references. This is great. So the high five retweet is something that my niece does, where you'll make a comment, you'll be like, oh man, this chocolate cake is amazing. And she will run across the room and high five you and go, retweet! Which is an amazing way to affirm someone. You'd be like, oh man.
Really?
Donald Trump is a living trash fire. Retweet! High five. Just high-fiving people. It's an amazing way. I want you to try it. The next time one of your kids say something exciting, they're like, Dad, I got an A on my test. And you just high-five them and go, retweet.
Oh, my God. Now, does she say LOL out loud, too? Instead of actually laughing?
She does not. She's 22, so she's a little bit past the LOL stage, but the high five retweet really got me. I find that so charming in day-to-day life.
High five retweet. Good gosh. You know what I like is when somebody says cosigned. Like if you say something that they agree with, they'll just say cosigned.
Cosigned.
I think that's very classy.
Yeah, she's also big on the .com. So if you drop a glass and the glass breaks, she's like, oh man, failure.com and stuff like that. Which I love someone who's come of age in the internet. It cracks me up.
Yikes.
Failure.com.
Failure.com.
Well, on that note, hello, everybody, and welcome to Success.com at Comic Lab, the show about making comics.
And making a living from comics. I'm Brad Geiger, editor of webcomics.com and cartoonist of Evil Inc.
And I'm his friend Dave Kellett, cartoonist of Drive and Sheldon and co-director of Stripped.
And this week's Hour of Comics Advice is made possible by your support at patreon.com/comiclab. So, Dave, how's it going over there?
It's good. I wanted to ask you, do you notice, by the way, that I've slipped in and I'm his friend, Dave Kellett? I've been sprinkling that into the show in the intro.
It makes me feel very warm inside.
Well, good. I wanted this to be a warm and welcoming space, Brad.
I appreciate that.
Because there's a lot of shows where I get very pointy with my criticisms, and I wanted to start with love and warmth and affection at the beginning of the show.
And then it's all downhill from there.
and then it's immediately criticism of how you pronounce non-plus. That's what it is.
Well, that's the only thing. You were talking about retweet, and for the longest time, my youngest son struggled with his R's. They would come out as W's, and he's gotten way better now. He's really and by the way, that's a really tough one for people to get on top of. We had him at a speech therapist, and she said, she goes, I know you don't get frustrated, but she goes, if you ever really need to know what your son is going through, try to say a sentence without using the T sound. And you'll know exactly what it's like when he's trying to replace W's with R's. If you can't really get your mind around it until you try, and if you try to say a sentence without a T sound, all of a sudden you slow down and you try to parse. See, I screwed it up. You try to parse your words, and that's what somebody who's doing this. So I'm really proud that my son has really mastered this and has really turned the corner on it. But if I ran around saying retweet, I would almost feel as if I was making fun of him by saying retreat incorrectly. So I got to be careful with words like that.
So I'm really fascinated by that speech therapist's description of the problem, because I am, as a cartoonist, as someone who, for lack of a better phrase, describes things visually.
Yeah.
I am always fascinated when someone finds a descriptive solution that describes for me the problem in a way that I never would have imagined it. And that woman describing it that way is a really insightful and helpful description into the struggle of trying to relearn how to pronounce something. That's great.
Yeah, she was great. She was really, really good. And something like that, man, you've got to be the right type of person. There's got to be absolutely no like negative reinforcement. Everything was positive because it really is a difficult, if you stop and think about it, you learned in a certain way to pronounce words a certain way. And now you've got to all of a sudden pronounce them a different way. It's really tough. And it was nothing but you really saw the power of positive reinforcement come to life over there. It was really kind of neat to see.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I'm glad you guys did that as parents. That's really awesome of you.
And he's, like I said, he's doing great. But and the R sound is one of the worst ones. That one is really, really tough to get past. So yeah. So enough about speech and saying words. We should probably say a few words about our Patreon account, right?
Yes, by all means, let's do that, Brad.
That's right. Well, as you know, Dave, people who support our Patreon at $5 a month get to send in questions, and we've got nothing but a whole show wide open here where we're going to tackle some questions.
Well, I've got the first one ready to go, my friend, from patreon.com/comiclab. Are you ready, Brad Geiger?
I'm ready. I'm ready and ready to go.
All right, Dave and Brad, since you have long-running series, how do you stay interested and not get bored or riddled with self-doubt? And I turn that to you, Brad Geiger. How do you stay interested and not get bored or riddled with self-doubt? By the way, this is 3 different things. So staying interested is one, not getting bored, which is different, and not riddled with self-doubt. So let's talk about all of those. How do you first stay interested, Brad?
Those are 3 very different things too.
Yeah.
Staying interested is somewhat easy for me in that I give my thought process when I'm writing is when you come to a fork in the road, take it. And that is whatever is on my mind at that time, whatever I'm passionate about, I find a way to work that into my writing. And so staying interested is just finding new and creative ways to direct the stuff that is top of mind right now. And it's like, okay, if I'm really interested in growing flowers, gardening, then I'll find a way to work that in. And if it doesn't fit into Evil Ink, I'll find a way to do those and maybe as single panel comics or something else. I'll give light to that stuff so that it's not distracting me from this other thing. So that's one, is just feel free to don't try to make your interests fit the comic. Sometimes it's okay to make the comic fit the interest. I did that.
Right.
I did that so often in Greystone Inn, where it was a lot more open-ended and worked more on like weekly storylines instead of longer arcs, right?
But even with Evil Ink, I see you doing it, and so I think it's great advice. It keeps the passion there. That's the wrong way to say that, but it keeps the passion there, you know? Well,
listen, it happened just this week because I had in like I was telling you earlier how I write the story on that sitcom template.
Yeah.
The page that was up for this past week, or no, today, to last week and this week, basically amounted to one character had called in sick, and that's all the direction I gave myself for this week and into the next week. It was a character called in sick, so he's not at the office to handle the crisis that comes up.
Okay.
And so when I'm writing this now, I had to go, okay, why isn't he there? Did he in fact call in sick, or is he taking a personal day, or is he on vacation? You know. So what I did was I fiddled around with a few different ideas, and of course, my mind is on Halloween right now. It's October, and this character happens to be a vampire. Although he's like a vegan vampire, his teeth are kind of not sharp, and he's not your typical vampire. And so I started following that, and what I ended up with was he was trying to check his dad into it, who was an old school standard vampire, a little bit more threatening, checking him into a nursing home. And then, of course, that became a nursing home that caters to paranormal creatures. And that turned into an entire three half-page swings on this storyline that I was able to write stuff that I really liked, that I thought was fun. It fits the story in that all I had to do for that little part was explain why he wasn't in the office.
Right.
And then in the fourth half page for this 2-page spread, it comes back to the office and the assignment gets placed to a coworker because the vampire's not in. That's all that 2-page spread had to do. Right. So
Right.
my way of staying interested was giving myself that latitude. If it wouldn't have been Halloween, I would have come up with another reason. He would have been on a cruise, maybe,
Right,
or he would have been fixing his house and the water heater broke, or any number of things. But I leave myself those openings and that flexibility so that whatever I'm passionate about right now can flow through. How about you, Dave? How do you stay interested month after month, year after year?
Well, I got to tell you, you really nailed it. I would have said it slightly differently, but you and I are having almost identical points. So one is to, if there is a topic that has sparked your imagination lately, like if somehow the Mars rovers have really sparked your imagination, find a way to work that in. And if not that in, the story behind the story of why you like the Mars rovers. So if you're fascinated, if you've been reading like 17 articles about the Mars rovers, it's in your brain, it's percolating. So use that. And if you have the kind of strep, you're like, well, I can't use a Mars rover in my 14th century story. Well, maybe write about a knight that went off adventuring in the way that a Mars rover would. Like use that energy and that passion and translate what you love about it into your comic. So that's one. And the other one is a version of what you said, Brad, which is that I always try, and it's kind of an active decision, to write myself into a corner.
Yes.
Because then the pressure is on and I'm sweating and I'm going, I don't know how to get out of this. All right, because if you haven't written yourself into a corner, for example, like when you called in or when the character called in a sick day and then you had to go, well, what's next? That's Brad Geiger writing himself into a corner going, I've set myself up. I've given my own self the layup shot. Now I've got to slam dunk it. All right. So where can he be going? What can he be doing? And so that's what I try to do. And usually what that means is I know I've got a great page right in front of me. Great.
Mm-hmm.
Write that page, make it a satisfying ending on that page. And then worry about tomorrow in a sense. Like don't screw future me. Like don't act like keep it within the realm of possibilities of where this story could go. But in a sense, you're not kicking the can down the road. You're setting up future you for success by writing yourself into a corner that future you has to write out of. And that keeps it interesting. It keeps it exciting. It keeps the motivation going.
Yeah. And that's the great way of writing this way, isn't it? In other words, I got a feeling you and I work very similarly. I've got an outline for this storyline, and I know on each page what general thing, what action, what plot development is going to take place. I may not know exactly what that's going to be. And if I sat there and worked out all of the details before I even worked on panel 1, page 1,
right?
And number one, I'd take a lot of the spontaneity out, but also I'd lose a lot of time. I'd have weeks and weeks where I wasn't getting anything done. So I come up with an outline, and I will flesh out the outline as much as is coming freely at the time. In other words, some pages, I'm like, oh, I know everything that's going to happen on that page because this has got to happen, that's got to happen. And of course, then that leads to this, that leads to that, and everything just flows. And then there's pages like I've had this past 2 weeks where it's a 2-page spread where I go, okay, all I know is he's not there. And I'm not going to worry about it yet. I'm going to let that percolate and let my subconscious work on that. I turned Chicago in that moment. Subconscious. I'm going to let my subconscious happen on that.
I put down my sausages and I say, I'm going to let my subconscious work on this. Sure, we're going to get that problem for you right there, sir.
Yeah. And by the way, that leads us directly into the second part about not getting bored. When you leave yourself these little surprises along the way and these little challenges along the way, that's a really good way to keep from getting bored because, like, for example, this 2 week span that I just got done talking about, That was very interesting.
Yeah.
I wasn't bored.
You know why? Because Brad wasn't bored because he's spinning plates.
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
you tell me how you can be bored when there's a plate spinning above your head. You've got to all your neurons are firing.
Right. In fact, sometimes it's the 3 weeks prior when everything was figured right out. I had a little bit more trouble working on that week's worth of stuff because everything had been pretty much cut and dried. It was like, no, at that point, all there was left was the mechanics of it. And okay,
Right.
I've got to draw this character on the left.
Right.
I draw that one on the right. I got to make sure this is happening. I got to make sure that's good. It's good to give yourself that. But but too much of that, and I think I would get bored. So I leave myself these openings in the storyline, right?
I think that's brilliant. And I'm going to do the reverse of this too, which is the questioner asked, how do you not get bored? The flip side of this question is if you are feeling yourself bored at this or that page or this or that aspect of your storyline, it's time to switch to storyline B or to a different character or from a different perspective. Because if you're feeling bored, I can guarantee you the readers are feeling bored. So along with what Brad said, I would say the flip side too is that if you are feeling bored, then you sense it. It's time to switch up the storyline. It's time to switch up the perspective of the characters.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say, Brad?
Absolutely. Give yourself that latitude. It's so many mistakes that I think let me put it to you this way. When I think that guy's making a wrong move. That doesn't mean that they're making a mistake, but when I think that it's happening, it's usually happening because they are so entrenched in this idea that I've got to do this thing that they're not seeing the world of possibilities beyond it. Do you know what I mean? So they're like, I've got to do this comic because, I'm building it towards something and it's not there yet. And I've got to do this and I've got to keep hammering it away. And that's when you want to take somebody and shake them by the shoulders and say, hey, you know what? This isn't happening right now for you. I can tell your heart's not in it. Put a pause on this, even if that means, like Dave said, starting a different storyline, or if it just means stop working on this thing for a little while and work on something else. That's a great way to reinvigorate your passion, is to just start something new. I've said it 100 times on this show. You can come back to this comic you're working on. You can start something new and you can come back and you can do 2 or 3 things in the next couple of years and it's all going to be okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so now let's tackle the last part of this question, Brad.
Woof.
Is how do you keep yourself from being riddled with self-doubt? I like the laugh there.
Yeah, I if you know, let me know. If you're not somewhat riddled, here's the deal. And I, when we were doing the pre-show, I don't want to steal Dave's punchline, but he goes, "That's my secret, Captain. I'm always riddled with self-doubt." And I know I'm trying so hard not to steal that. So, but
congratulations, you just did.
I gave you an opening for it twice.
No, that's fine. It's fine.
But the question, the answer is, if you're not riddled with self-doubt, you're probably doing something wrong. The trick is to never let that self-doubt stop you. Of course, you're going to be riddled with self-doubt. If you're not riddled with self-doubt, you're probably not taking this. You're probably not thinking enough about what you're doing. If you're not a little bit self-doubty, okay,
exactly.
But so own that self-doubt. And revel in that self-doubt and do whatever it takes to process that self-doubt, but never let it stop you from publishing that next comic.
Yeah. And here's what you have to remember. Bill Watterson had self-doubt.
Oh, yeah.
Charles Schultz absolutely had self-doubt. Every cartoonist you've ever loved riddled with self-doubt.
Yeah.
So here's the helpful, I think, metaphor or parallel construction. So bravery is not the absence of fear, right? Being brave is not the absence of fear. Being brave is having fear, but overcoming fear to do the thing that has to get done.
Oh, my God, yes.
And so art is not the absence of self-doubt. Art is seeing that there is self-doubt and overcoming it and getting the thing done that needs to get done. Art is the result of overcoming self-doubt.
Yes. Now, this is part of the problem, and that is this next part I want to talk about. You will never, ever hear me sharing self-doubt on my site or in my social media.
Yeah.
Never.
Oh, great
you
point.
You won't hear me saying crap about it. And because number one, it's piss poor marketing. And number two, you don't want to open that door. Because as soon as you open the door, I have a little bit of doubt about this. Man, people are going to come charging in through that door, and some of them are going to be helpful, and some of them are not going to be very helpful, and you don't need that.
No, and the ones that will stick in your craw are the unhelpful ones. You're right, Brad.
Yeah. Yeah, and when some of that stuff can stick in your craw for an awful long time, but to come.
For a decade. I just remembered an email I got a decade ago, and I shared it with Brad.
But listen, don't share your self-doubt on social media. You might think that it makes you more human. You might think that it's more honest. It's bad marketing. It's a bad idea. And by the way, and that's part of the problem. Because the reason that and I'm talking to the person who wrote us the question asker, the reason that you think that I'm not riddled with self-doubt is because I keep that shit to myself, right? So
you've never sounded more like a dad than right there. And
right?
The reason why you don't hear that from me, I keep that shit to myself.
That's the truth.
You just spitting your jaw out the side of your mouth.
That's the truth. It's not that I'm not riddled with self-doubt. I just don't. I don't share that stuff out there for a number of reasons that I've already enumerated. But that doesn't mean that it's not there. And that's a little bit unfair because then you take a look at somebody like Dave, and Dave's the same way. You don't hear him sharing a lot of self-doubt out on social media or when he talks on the podcast or anything. He doesn't talk about a lot of self-doubt. Of course not. But that doesn't mean that it's not there.
I invite you into my brain at 3 a.m. when I can't sleep. You'll see a little bit of self-doubt.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
When I'm lying awake going, my life choices, what have I done?
When you wake up in a cold sweat and your heart's beating in your throat and you're like, oh my God, what did I do? I could have just been an accountant. Everything would have been okay.
Why didn't I do what my cousin Larry did and go into accounting?
Yes. But no, listen, we're all riddled with self-doubt. We're all in the same boat. But the secret is, and it's like confidence. Everybody tells you, whether it's sports or doing well at school, you got to be confident. And if you can learn to fake confidence, you're going to do just fine. Right. And sometimes you got to fake your confidence. Sometimes you got to go out there and say, I'm doing this comic. And inside you're like, I'm not very confident about this. And out in the world, you say, this is my comic. Now read it. And if you can fake that confidence, pretty soon people are going to say, hey, this isn't a bad comic at all. And you'll start to build real confidence. That's a far cry away from fake it till you make it. I'm not sure I like fake it till you make it, but fake confidence until you've got the real confidence, like Dumbo holding onto that feather that makes him believe he can fly. Yes, if that's what it takes for you to get your comic out there, then grab that feather and jump. Don't let anything stop you. But just know that we all have our feathers. We all have our doubts. We all aren't sure we can fly. And you're not alone on that one.
Well, and also sometimes I don't want to go too long on this point, but sometimes it's not fake it till you make it, but sometimes the forced smile or the public presentation of confidence is also a form of self-therapy because you're publicly saying, no, I can do this. And then you have a certain accountability to having to do it, Yeah. So having that sort of forced presentation of like, no, I know what I'm doing. My career's going great. I got the storyline in hand. Everything's under control. It's also a way of reminding yourself, no, you do in fact have this. Don't listen to your self-doubt. You're a good artist.
Yeah.
You can do this. You can manage this project. You can finish this storyline. You can figure out this character design. Because sometimes your self-doubt is lying to you, frankly.
Yeah.
It's the little voice of all the negative people in your life that are now in your head and they're lying to you because you know what you want to do. You know how to get there and you'll get there fine. It might take some time, but you're going to do fine. So sometimes the presentation of like, no, I've got this is basically a fight against that self-doubt from taking over too much of your cycles in your brain,
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, anyway, let's go on, Bradley J. Geiger of Philadelphia, PA, to the next question. What do you say, my friend?
Yes, and it's a great one.
Let's do it. Hit me, Brad. Hit me.
This is straightforward and simple. What level of patronage denotes success?
What level of patronage denotes success? Well, that's a 6-word question that I'm going to answer with a 3-word answer.
Go ahead.
Solid gold car. That's anyway,
your
it's been
level?
a good show, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Now go shoot for that and don't come back until you got one.
Yeah, exactly. What level of patronage denotes success? This is a great boy, there's a lot of ways to answer this question. And so much of it depends on what your personal goals are for your cartooning and what stage you're at with your cartooning.
Yeah.
For example, a cartoonist who's been working for 20 years professionally has a very different answer to this than someone who's really trying to get their first big break or maybe take some time off of their full-time job to do a little bit of cartooning professionally on the side.
Yeah.
So let's start with the basics. They're clearly asking about finances, right, Brad? Is that how you would say?
I'd say so.
So I think we're not looking so much about the number of people as we are looking about finances. But that being said, boy, you're always better off with a patronage system, whether it's Kickstarter or Patreon, when you have distributed it amongst more people at smaller amounts than, one sugar daddy from the New York Wall Street area that backs you at $1,000 a month, right?
Yeah.
Because that's more dangerous. It's inherently more dangerous.
Well, yeah, because as soon as that person decides that they don't like you, you're done.
Yeah, if I've lost Gary, I'm over. I can't lose Gary, Brad.
No, you got to keep Gary smiling.
when Gary goes to Goldman Sachs, I've got to make sure that I'm making him laugh. So anyway, what I'm getting at here is that we're looking purely at finances. And so what's great? If you're in Iowa, $1,000 a month on Patreon, that's a great supplement to an income in Iowa. Maybe a little trickier in New York City or San Francisco. But if you're a professional, really, it's whatever level of income you can get that can support your life. And maybe that's full-time, maybe that's part-time, maybe that's super part-time. But really, it's up to and depending on the personality and goals of the cartoonist. And that's maybe an unsatisfying answer. So I'm going to turn it to you, Brad. What level of patronage denotes success for you?
This is fascinating to me because as the writer of webcomics.com, I see this question come up an awful lot, except I actually wrote a post as a answer to a question a webcomics.com reader had written me back in 2013. This question: how many page views equals success? Right? I'm sure this is a bigger question than I think it is, the person wrote, but I started my webcomic in January, and I think I'm doing okay with page views. But is there an easy number to point to say, at this point, you are successful? Another webcomic friend of mine said he heard that at 1,000 page views a day, you can quit your day job. I'm thinking this isn't true.
Wow.
Since that's about where I'm at now. So that was in 2013. And the question on, and this person was not alone by any amount at all. Everybody was asking themselves, how many page views do I? That's when you were opening, Dave. I know you were opening Google Analytics every morning, first thing, to see how you did last night. How the day shaped up. Did you have more page views than the day before? Did you have fewer than on the weekend? Am I getting close here?
Oh, Brad, there was the mania. There was a few years there with the mania.
In fact, I would check my page views several times a day. It would be the first thing I would look at in the morning and one of the last things I'd look at night. And now, when's the last time you opened analytics?
I'm not joking when I say it's been years.
Yeah. Yes.
And I'm not being facetious. I think maybe 2 or 3 years since I've opened analytics.
Same here. So the first thing that I can't not talk about is how different webcomics have changed over. That was just 5 years ago. That was 2013 that I wrote that. So interest and in true a life fashion, the more things change, the more things stay the same. Because I'm going to tell you, in terms of what level of patronage denotes success, I'm going to tell you the same thing I told this person who said, how many page views equals success? Number one, the real problem is you're looking for a magic number. And there isn't one. And that's because success isn't about traffic. And I'm going to say, even though you're going to sneer at me, maybe listen to me at home, that success isn't about the level of patronage you're getting. Success is success is what applies to you, not me, and not that guy across the street, but to you at this moment in time. And your success is completely different than somebody else's success.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
your level of success, I'm gonna give you the right answer now. Your level of patronage to be successful right now for you, your level of patronage has to be high enough that it supports you long enough to get to the next level.
Oh, that's a really interesting. Wow, Brad Geiger, everybody.
That's the answer. Yeah. Because the truth of the matter is, you're never going to feel successful. You're never going to feel as if you've arrived. You're never going to go, okay, I'm here now. I know this because for 12 years, I was obsessed with quitting my day job. Had to quit that day job. We talked about that, I think, on one of the first 2 or 3 shows, Dave. Had to quit that day job.
Sure.
That day job is keeping me from being an official cartoonist. And once I quit my day job, I'll be a true cartoonist. And I quit my day job and I woke up the next morning and I realized, shit, the only thing that's different is I don't have a paycheck hitting that bank account next Thursday. That was the only difference. Nobody treated, I didn't get, people didn't show up on my doorstep with baskets full of flowers. None of this stuff happened that I thought was going to happen. I was the same schmuck that I was the Monday before. Because success isn't like that. Success isn't a line that you cross. It's a goal that you're constantly striving for. So your level of patronage for you to be successful has to be high enough that it can support you and it can tide you over until you get to the next level. And then at that level, it's going to be just enough to keep you going till the next level. In other words, the success is your ability to keep going. Your success is the ability to keep setting goals and keep going higher. And it's not a line that you cross because you're never going to feel successful. You're never going to say, okay, now I can stop working. I'm going to coast now. Never going to happen.
Brad, as your friend now for, 20 years, whatever it is, every once in a while you come up with something that's so succinct and so perfect that it kind of genuinely surprises me because I've never heard you say it before. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like in a way that it's lovely to be surprised by people that you know well or have thought you have heard every construction of their ideas from.
Yeah.
That idea that success is making it manageable for you to work towards the next level. Boy, that's a great way of constructing that idea. That's really helpful.
Yeah.
Because just like you said, it's whatever level I'm at, whatever level Brad's at, whatever level Charles Schultz is at, granted he's dead, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're all working towards the next level. And so success is just keeping the head above water until you can do the next level.
Yeah.
Boy, what a great way to describe that, Brad. You really should, at this point, you should just fire a t-shirt cannon into the audience and leave.
Me and Gritty's the new mascot down there on the court, firing T-shirts together. No, it's and not only that, but what I like about that is it lets you off the hook. And here's what I mean by that: it's okay to be where you are right now. It's not okay for you to be where you are right now for the next 3 years, but for right now, for your level, how many patrons do you got? 50? Great. You earn those 50. Good job, because you couldn't have gotten to 60 without getting to 50. So good job with your 50, and be happy with those 50. You earn those 50. Pat yourself on the back for those 50. Now go for 60 because that's where you've got to go. You can't stay at 50 for the rest of your life. You can be happy with 50. You can be proud of 50, but now it's time to go to 60. And when you get to 60, you're going to realize that feels really good too, but I need to get to 70. And it's not about necessarily making more and more money. It's not necessarily about getting more and more fans. It's about constantly setting goals for yourself to improve, because this thing that we're doing is a constant improvement.
So can I acknowledge the elephant in the room here, though, with this question? Is
Go ahead.
because
Go
I
ahead.
think we're both honest about it. They're asking what level of patronage denotes success. And really, it's the last word there that we're looking, or maybe not putting
Yeah.
enough emphasis on. Because really, what they're asking with the word success is not, can I make a living from it? Can I make a part-time living from it? They're looking for almost a third-party external validation that you're
Yes.
doing okay, you're doing great. Um, and I think all of us feel that in cartooning because there's no moments from a third party where someone goes, Brad Geiger, you're hired. Brad Geiger,
Right.
you're promoted. Brad Geiger, you're now the VP of sales. You know, in a traditional job, there's somebody there to tell you you're doing great. Here's a gold watch to show you how great you're doing. You know,
Yes.
you're doing great. Here's a company car to show you how great you're doing. Nobody in cartooning comes up to Brad Geiger and goes, here's a company car, Brad Geiger. Like, that's so far removed from anything what we do that, of course, when he has a successful Kickstarter, Brad looks around the room and there's no one else cheering with him, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and let's drill down on that for a minute. Because when you go to that company where you get the company car and so forth, time and time again, you see that the person in the cubicle next to you got the company because his uncle is the district manager, and you see that the person over there got a raise because she's got pictures of the boss, with the lampshade on his head at the last company party. Whatever reason it is, there's a lot of reasons that people succeed in those situations that have nothing to do with the quality of your work. You know that if you've worked anywhere, that sometimes it doesn't mean bupkis if the quality of your work is there. Sometimes success is built on a whole nother set of circumstances. So you can't even grab for that success because that's hollow too. And that's why
Right.
I say your success has to be what you define it as. What do you define success at? One person might say, my success is being happy that I'm doing cartooning and I love to do cartooning. That's great. Another person's success might be, I'm making enough money to pay the mortgage. And that's success. And another person might be, I'm making enough money to buy pizza and beer on the weekends. That's success. Your success has to be what you define it as. And
Right.
for you to walk around trying to fit somebody else's definition of success, whether that's in a cubicle and you're not the boss's uncle, or whether that's in comics and your success is different than Dave's success, both of those are faulty. Your bigger question is not what level of patronage defines success. Your bigger question is, am I successful? And if so, what does that mean to me?
Right.
That should be the only thing that matters to you, is what your success is, not what Patreon's definition of success is even, but what is your, and if you're not, how do you get there?
Yeah, I'm going to add one on to your list that you were saying. Do I have enough to pay the rent? That's success. Do I have enough to pay for the car? That's success. Do I have enough to pay for pizza? That's success. I'll go one further because sometimes this needs to be said. Was I able to make comics this week, even though I'm doing a full-time job and raising 3 kids and doing all this stuff? Then that's success. Sometimes it's just the physical act of making the art amidst a busy life, even if you didn't have any income from it. That's success because you're making future you that will make income from the art a better artist in the interim, and you're producing art, which is itself a goal. So all those levels of success can be varied and different depending on where you are in your life. And so I don't even want you to limit it to money. Sometimes just the physical act of getting a project done or getting a project started is success. So.
Yeah, sometimes it's just, did I survive another day?
Sometimes that is life. Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes that's the success you need, and sometimes that's the success you get, is that you just didn't go toes up,
Right. Wouldn't it be funny, though, Brad, if at the end of this long conversation where we define success for different types of people, if we're like, all right, well, moving on, but before we do, success is $40,000 a year.
Yeah, yeah. That's well, that's what some people are expecting. They're like, "Come on, there is a dollar amount." No, there's really not.
There really is not, because also life situations are so different. Geographics are so
Oh
different.
my
So
God.
what's success for me is not successful for Brad, and what's successful for Brad is not successful for me. Brad and I all know enough to not compare all of our metrics against one another, because we have different goals in different places where we're at.
Oh, that's so true, and that's the first thing that was one of the first things I learned in comics, is that you never ask somebody what their page views are back then, because you're either going to be completely disappointed or absolutely nonplussed at what that number was, because
Yeah.
numbers are nutty that way. There's no top number. There's always up. So if I was at 160,000 page views, that was a lot better than last year when I was at 100,000 page views, but it wasn't anywhere near as good as 30,000 or 300,000 page views, which wasn't as good as 600,000. There was never the top number. It's not like I ever got all the page views.
Right. Yeah, the internet this week shut down because Brad got all the page views.
Yeah, God knows I wanted it to happen, but no, that wasn't going to happen. So yeah, and by the way, part of that is take it easy on yourself. Realize that your success is your success. You don't need to hold yourself to a standard of somebody else's success. You're torturing yourself a little bit with all of this. You should be answering your success, not mine.
Right. And just to put a capstone on this, as Brad just texted me quietly, success is $40,000 a year. So there you go.
Yes,
so Brad, thanks
40,000. 40,000.
I love the idea that we have all this supportive talk, but then really we have a number in mind.
But seriously, 40. You ain't doing, and that's after taxes. By the way,
right? Yeah, it's got to be
crying out loud.
That's amazing.
So listen, we've got time, Dave, for one more question. And this one, I think you're going to be way more better equipped to handle than I am. So I'm going to read it off for you. You ready?
Okay, let's do it.
How do you handle the IP issues you have when a guest cartoonist writes or draws some fill-in comics using your characters, settings, etc.? Now, this doesn't happen with me a whole lot because I don't do a lot of guest comics, and part of me, I'm going to be honest with you, Dave. The first thing I thought when I read that is, that's kind of a dopey question. What's the worst that could happen if somebody does a guest strip for Evil Inc.? They're not going to say, well, since I did a guest strip, now I have the rights to do Evil Inc., and they're going to start doing their own Evil Inc. book. That doesn't make any sense to me. But then I thought, well, wait a minute. Dave's got a lot of people that do special guest drive stories. And all of a sudden, it became relevant to me. It's like, okay, how do you handle the IP of somebody else doing a drive story?
Well, I mean, to answer your question, there's sort of Brad, would rather die than let a guest artist work on Evil Inc. He'd rather put an ice pick through his head than.
Yes.
I like the way you phrase it. You're like, I mean, I rarely do a guest strip. There's never been a guest strip.
No, there may have been one or two, but no, there's in the 18 years. It was super rare.
Yeah, I'm saying that jokingly too. But so I would qualify this on a couple different levels. Sometimes there is a guest strip that's just for fun. It's a one-off. They're just coming in because you have the flu, or they had a fun idea, or you wanted to take a week off, so you had a friend come in to do one. That to me is just a lark, right? It's just somebody filling in for fun, and it's no big deal. And we're all friends here, and everything's going to be cool. Is it safe from a legal standpoint? Probably not, but just do it and have fun, right? No big deal. Who cares? But then there are stories and guest appearances and guest artists that you want to use multiple ways and in multiple places. And for that, and this is more serious. This is more of a pro tip. We do the pro tips every week, Brad, for Patreon subscribers.
Yeah.
And this is more of the pro level than the 101 level. For those kind of situations, I think you want to contractualize it. And in most cases, you probably want to have some form of remuneration or pay for it. So what I do with a drive story is I approach artists that I like and I say, "Hey, I think you would like, or I think you'd be great doing a drive story. Would you like to write it? Would you like to draw it?" And then I have a short 2.5, 3-page contract that Katie Lane, the cartoonist lawyer to the stars, wrote up for me. Send it out to them. They sign and fill it out, and then we pay it. And the basic idea behind why I contractualize that is, first of all, I want their time to be paid for.
Mm-hmm.
Their time has value, and I want to pay them for it. And then secondly, their work is in my universe, and I want to be able to use that in my book collections or on my site or any of that sort of thing. So it's work for hire. It's not that they own that copyright. It's I own the copyright, and I'm hiring them to do some one-off work in that world. And so the IP has to stay with me. The intellectual property has to stay with me.
Yeah.
So I put it in contract form that I own the IP, but you're going to draw the story. I'm going to pay you for the story. That's the end of our interaction. But then the story goes with me going forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I do it that way. I can then put that story into a book. I can put it on the site. I can make a spin-off character from somebody they might have invented. It's all fun and games from there on. It's all fun and games. That's not the right way to describe it. It's all proceeds orderly from there is what I should have said.
Yeah.
And so that's why I do it, because you don't want, like, let's say you were Marvel Comics and you had Hulk issue 168. I don't remember what the number was, where Wolverine makes the first appearance.
Mm-hmm.
But you had invited somebody in as a guest artist, but you didn't contractualize it. And then they go and invent Wolverine. Well, the problem there is who owns Wolverine? It was on your IP that they created it in that Hulk story, but they were the ones that created it. So technically they own Wolverine. Well, thankfully for Marvel, they had a contract that said who owned what. And that's why you would contractualize it. And that's why I do it with a guest story. But if you're starting out, if you're in year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, do you need to contractualize it? Probably not. If it's a friend just coming in to guest, do you need to contractualize it? Probably not. But for anything that's of serious merit or of length, you probably want to contractualize it. Brad, I went too long. What are your thoughts on my thoughts?
Well, my thoughts, number one, is that it was Incredible Hulk 181 number that Wolverine made his first appearance. But
wow.
But here's the only thing I've got to add to that is this. As artists, we're always told, work for hire contracts are evil, never sign a work for hire contract. And very early on this show, when we had Katie Lane in, we made a break from that and we said, listen, there's no such thing as an evil contract. There are some work for hire contracts that you might want to sign. And the more important thing is not to say work for hire contracts are evil, but rather to say this is what a work for hire contract is, and you should know what the ramifications are before you sign them. And that's the important thing to note about a work for hire contract. And that's because Dave, when he's doing something like this, it's not that he's using an evil contract. It's a contract that has certain provisions that he needs to keep his business afloat and to keep the bad things from happening. And I guarantee you those people signing the work for hire contracts aren't looking at Dave saying, oh my gosh, you're making me sign an evil contract, because they know what the game is all about. They know the angle of a work for hire, and everybody's on the same page. So that's my important takeaway from all this, that it's good to kind of warn each other about work for hire contracts, but not in the sense that they're evil, just in the sense that you should know what they are. And in some cases, I've signed a number of work for hire contracts in my life, and every one I knew exactly what I was getting into, and it was a good deal. So that's I guess my takeaway is getting a better understanding of what work for hire is.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to summarize it. It's not evil; it's just a tool in the toolbox that you might use in certain scenarios.
Fantastic.
To put a cap on this person's question, I think wouldn't you say for most guest cartoonist scenarios, Brad, that are probably 99% going to just stay online, it's probably not something you have to contractualize or need to contractualize.
No,
it's just it's a friendship agreement.
Exactly. Like for somebody doing a guest strip, the thought wouldn't even cross my mind. Now, for somebody who's doing an entire story like they would be doing for Drive, where you're talking about several pages, now you're talking about another thing altogether. And yeah, you might want to contractualize that. But in 99% of the guest comic cases, I don't think you need to worry.
Well, and then one final question for you, Brad.
Mm-hmm.
Will you? When do I get to do a Evil Inc. guest comic?
You get to guest on After Dark anytime you want.
See what he did there? See what he did? I'm blushing already. You know I can't do it. You know I can't do it.
That's my devil's bargain with you, Dave Kellett.
Oh boy, my cheeks immediately went hot. That's amazing.
No, I don't know. I don't know where I would fit a guest comic into Evil Inc. I really don't.
Don't feel called out. I was just joking. Don't feel called out at all. I highly respect your desire to do it all yourself. We talked about this before, that it's your comic and you want to do it, and that's the whole reason you're a cartoonist.
It's my party, and I'll cry if I want to.
That's right. Thank you. And my cheeks are still warm. Isn't that funny that I'm still embarrassed at that thought?
I so love doing that to you. Almost as much as I love is saying that you've been listening to Comic Lab, the show about making comics and making a living from comics.
Your hosts have been my friend who loves to embarrass me, Brad Geiger, the editor of webcomics.com and the cartoonist of Evil Inc. at evil-comic.com.
And the red-faced Dave Kellett, co-director of Stripped and cartoonist of Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com and Drive at drivecomic.com.
I'm feeling called out for being Irish. The Comic Lab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton at theworldrecord.net, and this episode was edited by Matt Woodard of Woodsong Productions at www.woodsong.media.
Comic Lab is made possible by your support on patreon.com/Comic Lab, so we'll go ahead and say that twice. Patreon.com/Comic Lab.
Cheeks are still red.
Retweet. I keep that shit to myself, right?
So you've never sounded more like a dad than right there. And right? The reason why you don't hear that from me, I keep that shit to myself.
That's the truth.
You just spitting your chaw out the side of your mouth.